got a guy like that, that's built like that, the 6'4", guy, you got to translate all that.
They got Jordan Davis last season. They bring Fletcher Cox back in the Bentley. So I'm sitting there like, we need to put something to combat that. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. If I told you a year ago today that the former Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams, as well as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, were going to be viewed as potentially one of the worst teams in the league, what would your initial thought have been? Would you think I was crazy? You know, there is a price to pay when you go all in like that, and I'm just kind of curious to see your thoughts there.
I think with the Rams, honestly, I think I would be surprised. Like them following that Super Bowl run that they had, just to see them fall off the way they did, and then seeing a Jalen Ramsey leave, and you know what I mean, certain things happen the way it did. I mean, obviously the season they had, I mean, they had a lot of injuries, you know what I mean?
Right.
Matt Stafford going out, there was a lot of moving parts. But man, like just the going all in phase, and now just not knowing where you are as a franchise, I think it's kind of crazy on the Tampa Bay side. You know what I mean? I would have to assume like if the Bucs suck that bad, then yeah, Brady, you know what I mean, he must have retired, right? But I mean, if you look into last season, then even with a Brady, the Bucs was just terrible, man. So yeah, man, it's just crazy that it goes to show you that, you know what I mean, you can go all in if you want to, if you have that window that you feel you have. But you know what I mean, it is a price that you'll have to pay down the road for sure.
That's what, so for me, the Rams, they just have no depth, and they really marketed the present with their future, or built their present with the future. So now it's like eventually you got to pay that tab, and now they're paying that tab. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like, say week 6, the Rams are 1-5, 2-4. Things are not going well. The only real asset they have left to move for like draft capital or anything would be like an Aaron Donald. Cooper Kupp, I just don't think there would be much of a market for. He's had 2 knee surgeries. He's almost 30. He gets paid a lot. I mean, other teams would take him, but there's a lot of risk there. Stafford, you're stuck with, and he's like one hit away from being done. But they do seem to love Stetson Bennett. Maybe that works out for them. For Tampa Bay, though, it's kind of the same thing. Maybe it's a Todd Bowles thing. Like maybe their roster still is all right and their head coach is just bad. I mean, we saw it before with the Jets, but
Yeah.
you lose a Brady and you kind of left where, and I wouldn't be surprised if they had to, or if there was rumors of multiple players from Tampa Bay or the Rams on the trade block, before the trade deadline. But that kind of leads me into the Patriot Way, and kind of what they're doing. We kind of thought that they would possibly be tanking, but stink. But I mean, New England, they don't do that, man. They go in there, they hire Bill O'Brien at offensive coordinator. They sign Mike Gesicki in free agency, and they get Devante Parker extended, as well as Jawan Bentley. So they are still trying to make moves to compete, it seems. And of course, the D-Hop news is sitting around out there. But to me, you extend Parker 3 years, $33 million, and that's the average. It's only 14 guaranteed. So
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
The Patriot Way to avoid having to pay the piper later is you're not going to bring in D-Hop now and pay him much more than a Devante Parker, because the
Right.
Bill's not going to build the locker room and have this guy saying, well, why does he make this much more than me when I can do this?
Which is smart.
They don't do that in New England, and then at the same time, you get Gesicki in there. So for me, I can see a lot of 12 personnel. You got Hunter Henry, you got Mike Gesicki, and is there even a need for a D-Hop? I mean, maybe Tyquan Thornton coming into year 2. I do think New England needs another running back. Talk to me a little bit about the Patriot Way, though.
No, I mean they've been doing it for years, man. And honestly, like you said, they've never been like terrible. But one thing I always like commended them on was always like getting off of guys at the right time. You know, I mean, it was times where they got off of a Chandler Jones, and we thought, well, like, why the hell you get off of a Chandler Jones? We see him have a couple years with the Cardinals, and then little do you know what I mean, he's falling off. We'll see if he's able to bounce back, but then they get a Matt Judon over there just to replace him, and they kind of keep that thing rolling. Malcolm Butler, same thing, who was the Super Bowl hero. They get up off of him. They don't pay him that high deal. They just get another guy in there that could play well. They get a Stephon Gilmore, and look, you know what I mean, keep the thing rolling. So I think the main thing for them is they kind of have it set where they know who I'm gonna pay and where I cut the direction of where I'm trying to go. Now, when it comes to D Hop, I kind of look at it a little bit differently. I say why not get a D Hop. The only reason I say why not, is because I think right now you're in a weird spot where you're not there all the way, but you need to see who you have at quarterback, right?
Sure.
We don't know if Tyquan Thornton going to take that leap. I do like Devante Parker, but why not get another guy in there? You know what I mean, that can kind of take some pressure off of Mac Jones and see if he can thrive. You know what I mean, in that system over there. Bill O'Brien, he should do wonders for him. Settle him down a little bit. I just think they had a little mess going on last year.
Yeah.
But I think in general though, I like the way they operate. You know what I mean? Teams been trying to mimic that for a while, trying to, you know what I mean, keep things, you know what I mean, under the roof. And I think one thing with them is they're not going to overdo it. They're never going to overshoot it. We seen teams go all in, and then we see the Patriots just be able to, you know what I mean, just kind of keep it steady. It's never like they're never too bad. The only thing now is with them, the division is so tough.
Right.
The division is tough over there. But we should see, man. I don't know if Mac Jones is the answer or not, but I do like what they're building over there. It's like I wouldn't be surprised if they was to be a 10-win team this season. They can compete.
No, yeah. I mean, and the AFC East, that's obviously probably the toughest division. But if there's, I mean, I can see the Patriots winning 6. I can see them winning, like you said, 10. So anything is possible there. But I do think, they've got Ramondre Stevenson and then Pierre Strong at running back, and I think they need to add another piece there. Speaking of running back, though, we got the possibility of Saquon and Josh Jacobs holding out coming up here soon. Talk to me a little bit about the supply and demand of the running back room.
Man, it's crazy right now. And I kind of feel for some of the guys. I just wish it was something they could do as far as like something separate, like a guaranteed pool or anything like that. But we've seen it all around right now. We see Eckler, he hold out. He looked like he's forced to, play this last year out. You know what I mean? Saquon, he don't want to sign. You kind of listen to him be saying, look, man, he's trying to reset the market. Jacobs, he's trying to reset the market. But then, lately you hear Melvin Gordon come out and he's just like, man, playing running back sucks, man. You know what I mean? I want to sign somewhere I'm available. But, you know what I mean? These guys are really just going off of trees right now. You can get a guy for cheap, move off of a guy, and it sucks because it seems like, the prime for a running back is just 8 years. I think the crazy thing about it is, I mean, we've seen 2 teams this year draft running backs in the top 10. So I think as far as the draft, there's still some generational talent there. But I think once they get ran through the ground, if you're not in some type of committee, then, you know what I mean, it's not good. You're not getting the paychecks. Derrick Henry, he probably be out the door after the season. Dalvin Cook, you know what I mean? It's crazy. I'm like, if I'm playing Madden right now, that's the funny thing, is not Madden in general, but I couldn't imagine a situation where I have a Dalvin Cook and Elliott and a lot of these guys on here. They can win you some games. They can help your football team. I just think, the numbers that they have in their mind, whether it's the agent pushing or whether they got it themselves, I think they got to come to realization that, hey, it's not there anymore. You know what I mean? Even for Zeke, I know the situation when he first left Dallas was, one was the money, take a pay cut. He said, I'm not really willing to take a pay cut for this number. 2, Dallas, I guess pretty much told him, it's Tony Pollard, RB1. He felt like he could still be a starter somewhere. You go to free agency, you figure out, hey, neither one of those things was true as far as what I was thinking. You know what I mean? I'm not getting that money. Should I just take a pay cut? And I'm not a starting running back. So should I have just stayed and been number 2 in Dallas where I was all along? I think all these guys are figuring out that, being a running back is hard right now.
No, I agree. And I think, you kind of are seeing it, Cook, Kamara, McCaffrey, Zeke, all those guys kind of got the deals around the same time. And at that time, those were the best running backs in the league, in whatever order. But then now you have a Tony Pollard come into Dallas, and he's got way less tread on the tires. He can move. And the running backs, the more carries you get, like the worse you get pretty much, because you only have so much air in those tires. Dalvin Cook, you got an Alexander Madison where when he went down, Madison stepped up. Is Madison better than Cook? Absolutely not. But for his price, it makes more sense. So it's kind of like what you were saying, they're growing on trees at this point. Yeah. And it is unfortunate for those guys because, You look over in New Orleans, and Kamara could be facing a suspension, but they draft RB Miller and sign a Jamal Williams to a cheaper deal, and then the ball keeps moving. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to move on from Alvin Kamara, but you can't tell me Kamara's not good at football anymore. You know,
He's
like
yeah,
it's
he's
weird.
a beast. It's like Devin Cook, like we just talked about. Like I couldn't when he first got cut, I was like, oh, he'll be signed next week. And it's just crazy to see him still out there. And like you talk about these running backs and these backups, it's been going on for years. I remember first off, like Le'Veon Bell when he was going through his whole holdout. You know what I mean? Seeing James Conner just step in there, things kept moving. He was a beast. You know what I mean? We look back to we talk about Eckler, but the only reason we knew about Eckler was Melvin Gordon going through his situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Eckler getting that opportunity and he balling out, you know what I mean, as he did. And now that brings me back to Josh Jacobs. You know, the one thing here, I know he's holding out. We always talk about the money as far as the running backs and, you know what I mean, guaranteed. I don't think they're truly going to miss any games because if you got 12 million guaranteed, he need to go talk to Le'Veon Bell and have a conversation about that money. He missed out on it, how he never got the opportunity to get that again.
Right.
So the last thing he want to do is hold out. You know what I mean? Hold out and gives Amir White a chance to get in there, and the Raiders kind of sit back and say, "Oh, damn, like we're still functioning." He's still look at this Josh McCary. He's still balling. We still doing what we want to do as a team because it's different than having let's say a quarterback holdout. A quarterback holdout, it kind of force your hand a little bit because this is a guy that the offense revolving around. Running back, hey, this guy up. You know what I mean? So I would say tread lightly. But yeah, it's crazy because all of these guys are good backs. To see these guys falling off and, you know, me kind of hitting that wall at the age of 27, 28 is kind of crazy to see, though.
No, and it's crazy too because, you know, like you mentioned with Le'Veon Bell, if Jacobs does hold out, like he just loses that money. He's trying to stick it to the man, but at the same time, the Raiders are just pocketing that salary cap. Like they now have extra money on the cap to make a move to go sign somebody cheap, like an Ezekiel Elliott or a Dalvin Cook. You know, so it's like it doesn't really make sense because you're not sticking it to the man. You're just messing with your bankroll at that point. And like Le'Veon literally lost like $14 million because of that. His agent telling him it was a good idea, you know?
And then it's a couple things to go into that, and why I don't even blame the Raiders for making that move, right? I do like Jacobs, but then you know we see it all the time. He had a great year last year. We'll talk a little bit more of that in a few. But we've seen Jonathan Taylor come out there and have a hell of a year, and you know, I mean, if the coach was forced to pay him last year, then they would have kind of had a pause and think about that. Like you want to see players do it again. He go into the next season. He doesn't have the same type of year. We all, you know what I mean, first running back taken for fantasy, we thought his trajectory was going to be crazy, but it didn't happen the way we thought. Who's to say that if the Raiders don't pay him, you know what I mean, this year and he goes into the season to play, will he be able to repeat the year he had last year? And I think for him, obviously you want that assurance, but for the Raiders in general, I would think the same thing. You know, it's kind of crazy, but on the flip side of that, I think a lot of these guys got to think about this, like we talked about with Zeke, is if you hit free agency, you know what I mean, will that money be there? The same money that you expecting your team to pay now, who's to say another team would pay you that deal, man? So it's kind of gambling for real.
And not to harp too much longer on this one, but if you think about the Saquon deal, like you got running backs and you got weapons. Saquon Barkley is a weapon, right? He doesn't just hit the hole and run. He can catch the ball. He's improving in pass blocking. He's still not one of the better guys there yet. But I think he's made north of $35 million in his career being the number 2 overall pick.
Yeah.
And if you balance that with the actual number of games he's played, he's made over $1 million a game. So, like, it has been a lucrative deal for Saquon Barkley. Like, he has been paid well for what he has offered. I get his point of view because he's like, but when I'm on the field, I'm better than everybody. That is true. But your availability on the field hasn't been perfect. So to me, it's like the Giants have to really balance this one because you just paid Daniel Jones, which was a mistake. You paid Darren Waller. And then there's a lot of missing pieces in New York as well. So what can you pay Saquon Barkley? I think, to be honest with you, the number for the running backs moving forward is that $10-11 million range, not the 14, 15, 16 we were starting to approach.
Yeah. And it did no favors to the market to see guys like excuse me for a minute. Guys like Jamal Williams signing for cheap. You know what I mean? You see Miles Sanders, he go over to Carolina, he's signing for cheap. You know what I mean? And for these guys that want the high end number, if you can get the next tier for that price, and then you come in the draft and you draft a guy who can kind of fill that void. You know what I mean? You know, a lot of teams are favoring this committee now. Then I think a lot of teams are leaning towards the committee. You know what I mean? In this day and age, right now.
Yeah, because why not spend $12 million for 3 bodies when you can, you know what I mean? And instead
Facts.
of just spending it on one. But if you had to take a look at the best duos in the NFL, talk to me about who your best duos are.
Best duos. I mean, obviously, number one right now is Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce. No question. No question. Two, I would say that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase duo is pretty nice over there in Cincinnati. Um, it's weird because I don't view Kirk Cousins like that, but him and Justin Jefferson, hey, I can't knock the fact the numbers that those guys put up together. So that would be my three right now. Let's see who else out there. Would I say who am I leaving out? I don't know if I can do the Tua thing. I got to see more of Tua. Maybe right now Hurts and AJ Brown. And maybe
Yeah.
I'm biased, but that Dak and CeeDee Lamb duo look real nice to me, man.
No, I think that's a great pick with Dak and CD.
Yeah.
A couple other duos just off the top of my head here, man. Stafford and Cup, man. I like
Oh
that
yeah,
combo. I
sure.
do. And I think this year, I don't see the Rams winning many games, but I think, Cooper Kupp's going to be fantasy football relevant, of
Oh yeah,
course.
they're gonna light it up.
They're going to be
Sure.
losing a lot of games. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. Pat Stafford's going to show back up. And then, man, I think you kind of hit them all going through them right there. Allen and Diggs. I like that.
Don't sleep on. I can't say it right now, but the one that I'm excited to see is obviously that Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson duo and what type of numbers that can put up. I don't really know what it's gonna look like, but I can imagine it's gonna be nice for real.
No, that's actually a really good one. What
Oh yeah, Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. That's another nice one
that is
as
nice.
well.
Talking about, surprises of the 2023 season, we had last year Tua, he kind of came on, surprised us till he fell asleep, and then Jalen Hurts, year 3
Oh
kind of
yeah,
had his emergence. You mentioned Josh Jacobs previously, he won the rushing title. And then the Lions and Jags, man, they looked a little better, What surprises do you think we could see headed into this 2023 season that nobody's talking about?
surprises. I think I hit on this before. I think my surprise would be the Chicago Bears, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're a team that's, I mean, fighting strong and make the playoffs. They could shock a lot of people. As far as players, I don't know if this counts, but I just remember, like, I mean, going into last year, the hype that was around Derek Stingley, and then it seemed like the season started and Sauce Gardner bought off so hard that everybody kind of just forgot about him. He was second nature, but he still had a pretty good year over there. I could see Derek Stingley actually being a facehold, household name, and actually, putting up some nice stats this year. But just somebody that we're not thinking about. Don't be surprised if, everybody is down on this kid and kind of getting overshadowed. Don't be surprised if Jordan Love just come out and ball out this year. And I'll say that now, first and foremost.
That's I'm like way on the other side of the Chicago thing. I think there's still a lot of holes over there. But my surprise coming out of that division would be, man, the Packers have a young football team.
Okay.
We had that conversation about their improved special teams from the year before. And then their defense is young. They go get Lucas Van Ness. They get the little younger, little bigger on defense. They still have studs over there. Kenny Clark, Jair Alexander. Offensive line is not awful. And then you have a Jordan Love, like you mentioned, who we know nothing about outside of his time in college, really.
Right.
But there's no complaints coming out of Green Bay. The kid's kind of kept to himself, kept his mouth shut, and worked. And to me, like, that just brings a really, really big element of surprise where it's like he could be awful, but he could be so
He can light
quiet
it up.
and they could be quiet, and he might just come out and I'm not saying hit like the Pat Mahomes, but like he could finish the year as a top 15, top 10 run or quarterback easily.
And it happens every year.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like we talked about Jalen Hurts briefly. Like last offseason, nobody was talking. That's the crazy thing about it. Nobody was talking about him in the way they was talking about him. He had to go out there and prove that. You know what I mean? I don't even think the Eagles were as heavily, set on him being that quarterback of the future, but he had to go out there and get that done. Trevor Lawrence, he still had questions. You know what I mean? He had a hell of a year. Now he's viewed as a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah.
If you told me going into last year that Josh Jacobs would have been the leading rusher, I probably would have laughed at you. You know what I mean? But a year later, he's viewed like that. And the same could be said for Jonathan Taylor the year before. So it's always some of those guys. And look, if y'all got some people that y'all feel like we might be missing out on, go ahead and drop them, hit the DM, man. We love to have that in the action as well, man. But it will be a lot of that for sure.
No,
yeah.
and then I'm sorry, the last one I had, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers and Kenny Pickett could surprise a lot of people this season.
Okay.
You think about what it looked like early for that team, and it wasn't good. They did start with Trubisky. Obviously, that didn't work out. But I think they won 7 of 8 down the stretch, or 6 of 8. It was something. They had a nice little win streak
Yeah.
in there, and Kenny Pickett seemed to improve just a bit. But if there's one thing I know, Mike Tomlin gets his guys to play hard. I think Najee Harris had a really down year, and I think we could see him step it up again this season. They might find a different way to use him where, I mean, we know what worked his rookie year when Big Ben was there. He got all those targets. But now you have a Deontay Johnson. You've got George Pickens. You've got Pat Freiermuth. You drafted Darnell Washington. You got Cam Hayward on defense. TJ Watt's healthy.
Yeah.
And really, when they started,
well-coached team too.
When they started that little win streak towards the end of the season, that was when TJ Watt returned from that pectoral injury. So he does kind of make that team move. So while the Bengals and the Ravens seem to be the better football teams, just don't count out the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And you never can count out a Mike Tomlin team, man. So no, I think that's a fun conversation, man. I think I would actually have to sit back and put more thought into that one. But I also remember just the conversations we would have last year about Tua.
Mm-hmm.
Like, could he be good? Could he not? And then, I know a lot of people was down on him. And then he came out, it was 500 yards, 400 yards a game, slinging it all around. Obviously, the concussions kind of slowed it down and we didn't see how that would finish, But in general, I think I feel a lot better about, this season too and where he can be, long as he can stay healthy. He got a bright future as well.